Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to go over one of the cooler features on the Traxxas Pro Scale sand car, and that is the front disc brakes. I'll show you guys how they work and how and why you might want to adjust them. If you watch the video I just posted up on my first run on this, you'll notice that I mentioned adjusting the front brakes a couple of times. I just noticed I had a lot of drag on the front brakes, and you could see it when the car was going through some corners. If the front end like lifted a tiny bit or just unweighted, you could see the tire, the wheel, it just completely stopped moving. And a couple times, even just trying to reverse the car, you could see the wheels just dragging. So they were like set a little bit too tight, I think, out of the box, even though I wasn't running in really like dry, loose sand. So there is a note in the box, and then also in the manual, it does say if you're running this in really like loose, dry desert like sand, that you should do a manual adjustment on the cable tension. There's a few adjustments in there. We're gonna kind of go over everything, and like I said, we'll discuss why you might want to do those. My recommendation is out of the box, you're probably going to want to just loosen those up a tiny bit, just to avoid any bit of excess drag on the fronts, just until everything kind of settles in and wears in a little bit, and then you could kind of fine tune them. But I think it's going to be one of those settings that when you're running in varied terrain, you might want to kind of adjust it based on the terrain you're running in, and or to compensate for pad wear over time, right? So knowing how it works and how to adjust it is going to be pretty key to getting this system to work properly. So let's get into it. I also wanted to mention that I did find one issue when I got home. I noticed this front wheel was really, see how it just like stops? When I pulled the wheel off, I actually have a bent brake rotor. And I think what happened was at one point in the video, when I was editing, I didn't even remember this, but apparently a pretty thick branch had gotten jammed up in the wheel. And there was even a little bit of damage to the inside of the plastic wheel. So I think it kind of got caught up in there and just really jammed it and bent the rotor slightly. So I'm going to take that off. I'll show you guys all the pieces, the inner workings while it's apart. And I'm going to just straighten that rotor and put it back on, and we should be all set. Okay, so with the wheel off, we get a better look of the inner workings here, and I'll show you guys real quick, just for the hell of it. You can see something got jammed up in here, and kind of just, no big deal on that, but it's going to be hard to kind of see. Let's see if I can hold this steady enough. Yeah, you see how it's really something really got jammed up in there, but you could, it's really rubbing and binding up in there. So it should be able to straighten it pretty easily. So let's start here, and we'll work our way in and kind of review how the system works, because you're not going to really understand how to tune anything until you fully understand how it works to begin with. So what we have here is a fixed caliper. So what that means, it's not what you would see on like a full-size vehicle where the caliper is mounted on pins that are mounted to your spindle, where the caliper can slide back and forth to compensate for pad wear and to stay perfectly centered on the rotor. What we have instead is we have a fixed caliper and we have a floating rotor. So you can see here the rotor is cut out to match the star shape of your front hex here, and it just moves in and out and floats around. So it kind of just self-centers it, itself between your pads here. So you have a pad on either side, rotor is in the middle, and your cables go up here to the actuator inside, and when it actuates that, it squeezes the pads together, clamps down on your rotor. There are small springs between the pads that help keep them spread apart, and that's there to mainly kind of reduce drag and just let this spin pretty freely. And that was one of my initial complaints with this, and why I started messing with the adjustment. Is just there was a lot of drag on the system. And yeah, when everything is new, everything's going to be really tight tolerance, and you are going to get drag. And I'll show you guys the system in here that balances, it distributes the force equally between both sides. It's kind of just like a little pivot, and it's never going to really stay perfectly centered, and it's not the most free moving thing in the world. So you're always going to get a tiny bit of drag on one side or the other. This is not ever going to be like a truly drag free system. So you don't need it to be. It's not going to create that much drag or that much friction where it's going to really slow the car down or have a huge effect. But you want it to be kind of as free rolling as possible, while still having the brakes function the way you want them to. And look, this is going to be way more of like a user setting, depending on your preferences. Maybe you don't want as strong a front brake. Maybe you want a stronger front brake. Maybe the terrain you're driving on is really grippy, and you can go with a more aggressive front brake. If the terrain's not very grippy, or if you're running, say, like the rib style the rib style sand tire, which is not going to have any of these cross sections here, it's probably going to skid pretty easily on the sand. So you might not be able to have very aggressive braking. So again, it's going to depend on what you're running, where you're running, and what your preference is. So knowing how to adjust this is going to be key. Let's take a look inside and see what actually actuates these cables and how the rest of the system works. But this is all pretty basic here, and this is just the thing that, in terms of maintenance, you're just going to want to keep this clean. Blow this out with compressed air. If you're running, you'll see me a few times I had to kind of just put the car on its side and like bang on the wheel because a bunch of sand got packed up in there. That's going to be pretty common, unfortunately, depending on the type of the type of soil or sand you're running. If it's kind of wet and sticky, it might get bound up in there. But keeping this clean is going to be key. And same deal, if you run through water or anything, you don't want this to get any kind of corrosion inside the cable. So just keeping it clean. I don't know if there's maybe a little bit of cable lube at some point if it starts getting a little crusty, but we'll figure that out in the future. As of right now, it's really fine with just blowing it out. So let's take a look at the rest of the system. Okay, so I got the system powered up here, and let's check out this actuator here. So I'm going to hit the throttle, and that's the brake. You can see the whole unit moves back. Oh, that was reversed. So you can see under braking, this whole T assembly here moves back and it pulls on the cables. And these are like little ball ends here on either side of this pivot. I'm going to do this one more time and show you guys in here. You'll see there's a small lever that actuates your pads. You see that move? Anyway, so that's what's actuating your caliper here. But so this system here, you'll see this pivots, right? So you have both cables for your left and your right wheel mount to this, and this whole moves as a system here, this whole unit, right? But this can pivot back and forth, and what that does is just ensures that you have an equal amount of force going to both the left and the right wheel. And that would be important for things like pad wear, because think about it, if you're doing way more left turns than right for whatever reason, say wherever you're running, you like to do a circuit counterclockwise, and you're doing way more left turns, your front right wheel is going to be traveling a longer distance because it's a bigger arc around the turn than the inside, right? So if you're on the brakes a lot, you would eventually, over a pretty long period of time, you would wear out the pads on one side quicker than the other. And then without having to go in and like readjust and set the right amount of gap with your pad and everything to both sides to make them equal, this is a really clever way just to keep a nice balance between left and right, because if one's a little tighter, it's just going to pull a little more on one side. It's just going to equally distribute that force. So pretty ingenious idea here. Spring system you see in here is your brake preload adjuster. This does not adjust, turning this adjuster here does not adjust anything with the distance from your pads to your rotor. So it has nothing to do with that. It's really just adjusting the preload on this spring, similar to how a preload adjuster on a shock would work. In fact, it's identical. So out of the box, the preload is set to 7 millimeters, and that's from the right side here of the preload adjuster just to the end of the threaded rod. And I know it's kind of hard to see with this additional light module here, but this will be your preload adjuster. So 7 mil is stock, and you have a range of 3 to 10. Now, the tighter you make this, if you turn that clockwise and crank down the spring a little bit, it's going to make your brake force more aggressive. It's going to come on stronger and earlier in the brake travel on your trigger. And the more you wind it out and loosen it, it's going to make it less aggressive. So that's really just in the responsiveness of your brakes. It doesn't really change anything in terms of the pad to rotor clearance. In order to change anything with that, you need to adjust these little thread-on ball ends. They thread onto this kind of brass-colored part of your cable end here. So I'll show you that in a second. So again, less preload, winding it out is going to be less aggressive, a little bit easier to control. It's not going to really like transfer all that weight forward and try to lock up the front brakes like a panic brake situation. Cranking in the preload, if you're going clockwise, that direction, it's just going to make it really more aggressive and sudden braking. So out of the box, you're going to see this attached to the car. And basically, brake adjustment for desert sand conditions, optimize, blah, blah, blah. You need to disconnect the ball cup and unthread that like I had just stated. So some brake dragging may occur after hard cornering, sand buildup, keep driving, should clear up. That I did notice that, you know, you do notice from time to time. And that's why sometimes if you take like a little bit of a digger and you get a bunch of sand buildup, you just knock it out. But let me show you guys how those pop off and how that adjustment is made. So just take a needle nose, and I would recommend bring a needle nose with you when you're going to run this thing, because this might be something you're going to have to kind of play around with. I just kind of grab the ball end there and just, you know, pop it off. Then they were a little tight initially. Once you do it, once you unthread it, they're going to be kind of loose now. But basically, just hold the back of the cable here, the little gold colored part, and then you could literally, it's going to be hard to see with my hand here, but just unthread the whole ball end, right? And you could turn it in or out. So out of the box, they pretty much come wound all the way in. They're like fully tight. And then according to Traxxas, what they want you to do is for running again in loose desert-like sand, 8 turns or until 3 threads are showing. I came out 4 full turns and it seemed to be pretty good. It definitely was better than with it cranked all the way in out of the box for the conditions I was running. And now I would not consider the sand I ran in desert-like sand. It was a lot grainier. It was damp. It's almost like a mixture of dirt and sand. I almost feel like it's more like a silt from the bottom of the nearby lakes you see over there. I think they literally dug out those lakes and just dumped all the silt there. It's probably not really even technically sand. But anyway, that seemed to work for me, like 4 turns. So this is something that you can kind of mess with and see what works for you. But if you're going right out to like really full-blown desert dunes, I would do what they say. Just go out to 8 and try that. You're not going to really need crazy braking in that level of sand. As soon as you let off, it's just going to like almost stop by itself. So knowing how to tune this, it's very simple to do. Just all you need is a needle nose. You pop this off, pop those off, unscrew them, keep track of how much, you know, and make a note on your phone where they're set, make them equal, and you're good to go. And you can kind of see the difference. And that would be my recommendation is do a quick little tuning session with this. When you get to where you're going to be driving it, before you start, you know, running it, do a quick brake check and just see how they're working, and then do a quick adjustment and get it dialed in, and it's going to work much better. And once you have it adjusted, just grab it, pop it back on. That's all there is to it. You are going to be limited to the amount of gap you can achieve in there because, of course, the pads can only move out as far as they can move out, right? So at some point, you're just adding slack in the system beyond what's needed, and it's just going to create a much bigger delay in your brake, which could actually be good depending on how you want them set up. If you want to have just you're almost like kind of diverting most of the braking to the rear, where you initially hit the brake, your rear wheel is going to brake. If you have a lot of slack set up in the system, your front wheel is going to be a bit delayed. So maybe that's actually a cool way to tune it, because then you can kind of initiate some brake slides with the rear. So there's some really interesting stuff that can be done with this system, especially if you were to swap out the Traxxas radio to a more advanced radio system where you could program in a curve, like a channel curve or a brake curve essentially. But if you just did a curve on the channel that controls the front brakes, you could have them start out softer and then ramp up more aggressive. You can do the reverse. There's a lot of different settings you can do that I think would be really cool. You could then also have a brake curve set up for your rear wheels and a different one set up for the front. So it could be a cool way to achieve some really nice balance without having to go in and do this setting all the time. So I just looked to see if there was an exploded view, just to see. I'm curious to see how the servo is actuating this rod assembly here. I didn't see it. I'm not going to take this apart in this video. It's going to be a little too involved, but it would also be interesting to see that if you adjust the endpoints on that servo, how that's going to affect this. But probably not something I would recommend doing right away until you can really kind of get a good full picture of how this thing operates in terms of the throw of the servo. So let's take this caliper off. I need to remove the rotor here and try to straighten it out. Appears that it's just two screws here. One thing I love about working on large scale stuff is just the size of the screws. You know, these are all 2.5s. Almost every screw on this car is like a 2.5, which is nice. Just a lot less chance of stripping things out with tiny little screws. You can see those springs. They're actually a little bit stiffer than I thought. They looked kind of wimpy, but and you can see that's the actuator in the center there that presses out. So what you have actually is a fixed outer pad, and the only pad that's moving, let me see if I can get something to move this with. So the only pad that moves is the inboard side pad, which is exactly why they had to go with a floating rotor. Because if not, normally this whole caliper on a real vehicle would be mounted to pins and it could slide back and forth to stay centered on the rotor. But with this design, and I could see why they did it. It does simplify the whole thing. But yeah, pretty cool. Let's see. Let's put this on a flat surface and see how off it is. So this workbench isn't exactly scientifically flat, but I mean, yeah, it's not supposed to do that. That's really bent. I can't imagine that that's just from a branch. I mean, holy crap. That's a cool brake rotor, though. I was able to straighten out my brake rotor. It was a little bit harder than I thought. It's pretty tough steel, you know, so I had to, I put it on the flat portion of my, the anvil portion of my bench vise and just kind of smacked it wherever I could see it was a little bit warped, put it back on, held my finger there, rotated it, found like the kind of high spot on the back, and then did it a few more times, and eventually I got it pretty straight. So let me show you guys where I'm at here in terms of the free spin on my wheels. It's always good, by the way, when you have a brand new RC and you got to use a big hammer to fix it. It's great. So they definitely spin a lot freer. And of course, one is always going to be a little bit more than the other, depending on how this little pivot is positioned inside. But when you're driving, they will kind of balance themselves out. But yeah, this is a lot freer than I had seen it the entire run. So I think the pads are wearing in a tiny bit, so that's helping. The 4 turns out on my cable adjustment, that's helping. I think that's kind of where I want it now. But again, this is going to be something I'm probably going to mess around with and set based on where I end up running this thing. Okay, so that's going to wrap up this video, guys. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys to understand how the front brakes work and how to adjust them, and you know why you would want to possibly adjust them. So again, it's just going to be kind of up to you. Look, be careful, man. This is a big, fast car. If you start messing with the brakes on it, you know, you don't want to be in front of it. But yeah, just know I would go out and, like I mentioned, just tune it for your area. Go out, do a couple brake tests, make some adjustments, test them again, get it to the point where you're happy, and then go out and rip the car. I don't think these pads are going to wear out very quickly, so it shouldn't be something you need to do very often if you're running in the same location most of the time. So other than that, guys, I have found no real issues with this. I'll just show you real quick here. Definitely a little bit of wear on the lower arms, nothing horrible. That's bound to happen. No other mechanical issues. I mean, I got a little bit of, hold on. Yeah, the old, if this van's a rockin', don't come a knockin' situation. Spray those down with some lubricant and should be good to go. Next up, maybe suspension tuning at some point. I was pretty happy with it. I feel like it's a little bit over damped for, at least for where I was running it, but we'll see. Next location is bigger, it's more open, some bigger jumps, bigger whoops and stuff, so maybe it's gonna work out fine for there. Definitely want to get different front tires. They're not even showing as being available on Traxxas site right now, it just says sold out. Notify me when in stock or whatever, but the ribbed front sand tires are going to be a must for this car, in my opinion. These things do not corner well at all when paired with paddle tires in the back. So hopefully my Gravix tires will come in for the back and I could take this out for a rip in the dirt soon, and we'll see. We'll go from there. Other than that, this thing rips, man. It's really, really good out of the box. Don't really feel a need to change the gearing or mess with anything else. Might go and install some stronger fans on the motor. It wasn't that hot yesterday, like 65 degrees here Fahrenheit. And it got warm. It was nowhere near any level of temperature that I would be concerned about it. But look, when the summertime goes up to 90 degrees here, 95 degrees sometimes, it might become an issue. So I'd rather put some more powerful fans on there ahead of time. So, but that's about it. Everything else was great. So happy with this thing. Stay tuned. You're going to see a lot more running video and probably some more tuning videos in the near future. Thanks for watching. Do me a favor, subscribe if you like my channel. It really helps me out, gets me promoted a little bit more on YouTube. And, hit the like button if you like it. I'm not going to force you. And if you have any questions, comments, leave them below. And I do my best. I pretty much get back to everybody at this point. My channel's not that big where I have to ignore people. But thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you in the next video. Later.